So it's just after noon, and I see that we have 4 watching on our first inaugural Comm Lead live stream Q&A. Now, it may be that those 4 are a combination of my colleagues and my mother and my father and my best friend, but on the chance that there's someone watching who is interested in our program, I would be absolutely delighted to answer questions. If you want to type them into the chat box, I will read them, I will acknowledge, and then do my very, very best to answer or direct you to someone who can. And as was announced in the initial publication around, or the presentation of this opportunity, I wanted to let you all and just remind you that there will be a short delay between when your chat appears to me and then my response. So your patience is appreciated. And as I said, an invitation to anyone who's watching to type in a question, and I'll be happy to answer them. Perfect. Oh, great, this is the whole thing. So right now we have 3 watching. I think it's my mom and my dad and Scott. Maybe not my mom and my dad as separate people, but so we'll see. Oh, and someone came back. Oh, I can't wave. Oh, I can hear myself laughing 20 seconds later. Oh, here, Rebecca Gurley with our first question. Thank you so much. Rebecca asks, I apologize, and you no need to apologize ever for a question. We're grateful for them. I don't know a lot about the program, and can you give me a broad overview of it? I'd be happy to do that, Rebecca. It's actually a perfect question to start off with because it gives me a chance to set the stage a bit about this graduate program. So I'll start first as the daughter of 2 historians with a little bit of history. We are a professional graduate program at the University of Washington with 15 years on this campus. We were one of the first self-sustaining programs here at the University of Washington, a professional graduate program geared towards communicators. And we started with an inaugural cohort with the Master of Communication in Digital Media. That was the degree that one earned, a Master of Communication. And that degree is one that, as I said, is now 15 years old. And 2 years ago, we added a second track of study within the program called the Master of Communication in Communities and Networks. And so you have these 2 tracks that exist now under the umbrella, the program that we now refer to as the Communication Leadership Program. So we have always been housed at the Department of Communication in the School of Arts and Sciences here at the University of Washington. Our cohorts we have a blended cohort for both the MCCN and the MCDM tracks of roughly between 50 and 70 students a year. And to then go into a bit more of the granular information about the program, like many graduate programs, we have a certain number of credits that are required to achieve that degree. In our case, it's 45 credits. We have a tremendous amount of flexibility in terms of how the pace at which people go through the program. It's definitely a program that is geared towards the working professional. And so while we have 2 core classes that we require each of our students in the blended cohort to take in the fall and in the winter quarters of their first year, after that, the time frame is really up to the particular student. We have students that take 2 classes or go full-time, we call it, and would be able to complete the program in about 5 or 6 quarters. But then we also have a large number of students who are working professionals and are taking classes on top of a full-time job or a part-time job and choose to just do 1 class a quarter, which is a way to make your way through the program at a bit more of a glacial pace that suits the working professional. And if you're doing a class a quarter, perhaps even taking the summer off, you're looking at more like a two-year approach to the graduate degree. So we try to create a program that is as flexible as possible, knowing that we want to attract a diverse group who share that interest in moving their careers forward in terms of all kinds of opportunities for communicators. We have people working in every sector you can imagine, and we really also are a range of students in terms of those that have a tremendous amount of work experience and those that are more recently emerging from an undergraduate degree and looking to not just pivot their career the way some of our more advanced career students are, but really launch their career within the communication field. So it's meant to be a hospitable place for any of those students. And we really, I can tell you myself as someone who who helps to coordinate the program but also teaches one of the core classes, I really appreciate the intergenerational nature and the range of experiences that exist in any particular cohort. So again, broadly speaking, all of our students earn a Master of Communication. They apply to a particular track. You either apply to the Master of Communication in Digital Media or the Master of Communication in Communities and Networks. And then after 2 required core classes that occur in the first fall and winter quarter of your time, the pace at which you complete that program and achieve those 45 credits is up to you. Many of our students will take 5 electives following those 2 core classes. We have a real range, and I encourage everyone to go to our website and take a look at the breadth and depth of the classes that are offered. They're divided by the tracks. If you have questions about, well, am I an MCCN student or an MCDM student, I always encourage students to take a look at our curriculum and get a sense of which is the combination of classes that really appeals to you. We also, though, recognize that there are a lot of concentric circles of interest when it comes to the 2 tracks, and so we have it worked such that students are able to take up to 2 classes in the alternative track to achieve their degree. So we design that flexibility with intention, knowing that there are often classes that appeal in the alternative track. And I also just wanted to mention that we have, given the fact that it's a professional program, we also encourage internships and independent studies as also a way of achieving the 45 credits towards your degree. So there's a tremendous variety in ways that students complete the 45 credits, but we are really quite proud of the way that we've designed classes that are core classes that really gird you and set us a very foundational approach to your graduate career, but then also a range of electives that are meant to appeal to a wide range of professionals or people who have that ambition to move their professional career forward. And then, as I said, also we have students that pursue internships and independent studies with particular faculty to achieve their 45 credits. I think the final thing I'd say, and see if you have a follow-up, Rebecca, is that mentioning the faculty, I would be remiss to talk about the graduate program without really emphasizing the caliber of faculty, and their bios are also all available on our website. But part of my role as an associate director at the program is to not only have a 10,000-foot view of the curriculum and how it's put together, but also I do a lot of work recruiting and training our faculty, given that many of our faculty are working professionals, and we feel strongly that if we're going to offer classes in digital law, if we're going to offer classes in usability and content strategy, we are committed to make sure that the faculty teaching those classes are deeply embedded in that professional world, can speak to it in a very contemporary way. But at the same time, we recognize that a professional life in usability or at a law firm or working in a boutique firm, a communications firm, we work very, very hard to train them, to mentor them, to support them in the design of the class and the delivery of the class, because we know that the investment that our students make in the program absolutely demands that they're receiving a superb educational experience. So we work very closely with our faculty. We have regular faculty meetings. There's tremendous support at taking very talented and very eager professionals and experts in the field and turning them into equally expert and talented educators. And so that's something that we're very proud of in the program. So I will stop at that point and see if that was helpful, and if there are other elements within, or there are other questions about the program that would be more specific that I can follow up on and answer. Thank you for that first one. You can shove me notes if you want. Oh, sorry. Oh, good. Rebecca's got a second question here. What types of careers do graduates go on to have? Can you give examples? Absolutely. And as I said, to start, we have a range. I think that the graduate program is very well suited for, regardless of whether you are embarking upon a career or pivoting on a career or looking within your current career just to achieve maybe new levels of responsibility, new levels of recognition, new levels of opportunity. And so I certainly know that in the context of my classes, I design my curriculum to not just appeal, but to address the needs of that variety of students. I think that when you look at the kinds of careers that our graduates go on to, I can certainly say that given our belief, and this is something that I think is very relevant when you think about the value of this particular graduate degree. Every organization today is a media organization, whether or not that organization understands that fact or not. And more organizations are very keenly aware that they are media organizations. And what I mean by that, and what we mean by that as a program, is that regardless of whether an organization actually has a dedicated communications team, given the proliferation of communication technology and the importance of organizations to be very proactive around communicating their vision, communicating with their constituency, whether that's a customer base, a client base, a community level. Organizations have to be savvy and they have to be nimble when it comes to the way that they communicate. And so what we're seeing is that students are drawn to our program with a wide spectrum of interest in terms of how they're going to apply their degree. I would say, though, that you could create some groupings or some generalizations, and I'll start with that. And I'll start specifically with the MCDM track, our more established track that's been with us since the very beginning, now 15 years old. And I would say that within the MCDM population, you're looking at students who take on a range of tasks. There are certainly students who come from industry. They are working in a range of everything from some of the usual suspects in terms of industry and tech here in this city, in this region, in the Pacific Northwest, whether it's at Microsoft or at Amazon or at Adobe. We have a number of students who are now working at Facebook, both in California and here in the Seattle office, which is growing exponentially. And the roles that people play at these organizations really take on the spectrum as well. We have students that are very much involved in when it comes to content strategy or looking at issues of how organizations like Adobe, for instance, are using certain platforms to be more sophisticated around storytelling. Certainly, when we think about the MCDM, we also have a very strong subset who are really interested in PR and marketing and using PR and marketing either through the channels of a more dedicated PR or marketing or communications firm, like some of the larger ones like Weber Shandwick, or some of the more boutique ones that do very deliberate social media work like Deloitte, formerly Banyan Branch, or Aggregate, or 206, or we were just recently we had an event for students down at Smashing Ideas. So these are examples of institutions where we draw from our faculty, we have students that work there, and those energies are around how can I take my degree and create communication strategies, and in the case of this subset, usually at a client-based level. So they are working in a firm that work with clients where they design communication strategies. I'd say that along with those two examples, high industry and then private sector when it comes to firms where they take on clients, you also have a large group of students who are actually embedded in communications teams internally to an organization. And those really can range in terms of the spectrum of sector. So we've got graduates, for instance, that are doing communication strategy for the public sector, whether it's at the City of Seattle or at the Seattle Police Department. We've got students that are involved in the nonprofit sector, whether you're talking about Seattle Children's Hospital, Seattle Art Museum. You've got students that are involved in smaller nonprofit efforts, whether it's around environmental issues, issues of environmental stewardship, who are either parts of more intimate teams that are doing communications work, or in some cases, some of our students really are the communications team at their organizations. We also, in terms of, I mentioned private industry in terms of the tech environment, but we also have a large number of students who are part of private industry, but more thinking about, for instance, we've got a very strong population or a strong number of students who are involved at the digital level at Starbucks, for instance, who are these are larger private firms here in Seattle that have brand recognition, are not necessarily what you'd consider with the tech industry, but they bring their technological and their communication know-how to the work of telling the story of that particular company. When it comes to the MCCN degree, our younger degree, the Communities and Networks degree, we like to talk about both of these degrees being and our program in general as looking at not just the creation of strong content, which in our mind very often involves the idea of storytelling, but the engagement around that content. How do you take that content? How do you present it to the audience? How do you change hearts and minds through that presentation? And then ultimately the measurement of the success to which that content engaged that particular audience to create the change you were looking for. So all of our classes approach those three thematic buckets, if you will, in terms of the program. Some obviously would emphasize one of those elements over others, but when we think about the two tracks, the MCDM track is one where there's really an emphasis on the currency of that content, not just the creation of that content, but again, like the power of that content to move hearts and minds. And if you wanted to look at by contrast, while there's no question that the MCCN with the Communities and Networks is interested in the power of content, there's also a bit more of an emphasis in this track in terms of the currency of relationships and how are you building relationships, building community to engage with that content and then use that content to promote the vision of an organization or to promote the efforts of an organization or promote a certain policy change of that kind. And so I use that as a lead up to talk more specifically about careers that MCCN students pursue. And we see many of those students coming to us with an interest in doing that kind of community development work when it comes to communicating. It doesn't mean that they're not interested in the content, because the content is so critical in terms of having that successful engagement with organization, from an organizational perspective. How does an organization tell its story effectively in the community, with its clientele, with its customer base, with its constituents? But we see students, for instance, within the MCCN that, like the MCDM, are embedded in communications teams, some of them at the nonprofit level, some of them in industry, some of them at the public sector. We see MCCN students that are working within higher ed. We have MCCN students that are working very closely with consortiums within higher ed to see how can we effectively show the way in which higher ed institutions benefit the cities and the communities where they are based. And so teams like that are working, or we have students, for instance, that are working in communications teams that are part of large higher ed institutions. So you're going to see, I think, more an MCCN student. There's a greater chance you might find them in that world of higher ed, or in that at the Gates Foundation. We have students that have worked within the communications world there as well. So those are just some examples, I would say, of where our students end up. And at the end, I would also say I would be remiss in not mentioning the entrepreneurial student who has their own career. We definitely have students that are independent filmmakers who come to our program as photographers, who have run their own business for years, as web designers who have run their own business for years. So I'd say with all of the examples I gave of students who get a paycheck from a larger institution, we have a really special, and I'd say robust in its own way, group of entrepreneurs who either have founded their own companies and now have employees, who have just started out and have a firm that starts with them, and then they start to build it as they go through. So that entrepreneurial, independently employed creative is also an example of the kind of student that we attract as well, and that's certainly a career that is modeled in many of our students in both the MCDM and the MCCN track. So I hope that's helpful. I know, I'm just like talking, it's hilarious. Scott! It's so good to see you. Let's see. Okay, so Scott asked if it's going to be only viewable after the session ends at 1 p.m. today. Oh, let's see. Ilona gave me those instructions, and I'm trying to remember. I think, so first of all, this is going to be repeated every Wednesday at 12. It's not always going to be me, because we have such a wonderful team here at Comm Lead. We're going to spread the wealth and also spread our personalities online by bringing different people on. But I don't think they're archived to look at. I'm not sure. I'll double check on that, Scott, and let you know. Thank you for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. Now let's see. Rebecca and Mei Ling have 2 questions, so I'm gonna move through these. Let's see. Rebecca Gorley asks, would the program help me learn new skills to start my own magazine? The entrepreneurial aspect is intriguing to me. I'll start with that one, and then Mei Ling, thank you very much for your question. I'll get to that after answering Rebecca's here in the order that they came in. I think the short answer, Rebecca, for you is absolutely yes. When I think about the necessary ingredients to how one might start a magazine, as you suggest, some of the things to come to mind for me are, first of all, you're putting forward a business proposition. And one of our stalwart classes that we've been offering for years and years and years, taught by a faculty member from the Foster School of Business who also teaches for us, is our foundational business class. And this is a class that someone like you who has a great idea for some kind of communication-oriented project that they want to start or organization, this is the class for you, I would say this is the first class, one of the first classes for you, because what Rick McPherson does, and you can read about his class, his foundational business class, which is up on our website. It's offered both this quarter in the winter, in the fall, but also it'll be offered again in spring. So it's offered twice a year. It's track neutral because it's such a foundational and important class. So MCCN, MCDM students can both take it and have it apply immediately to their electives. And what Rick does with this class is really take you soup to nuts through the core competencies around launching a new business. And we're talking about everything from doing market analysis, looking at budgeting, looking at the design of mission and delivery, looking at supply and demand, looking at the kind of the funding opportunities that you need to launch. So that right out of the gate is a class that resonates for me as one that would be very attractive to you. Now, we also know that for any new organization, it's really important to be able to think about your digital footprint, and so the kind of content strategy classes that we have that really help students think and navigate around how does an organization that's, in your case, new and young, think about aggregating its digital properties. I think about our usability classes and how those usability classes, we have a sequence of 2 of them, how they would help you, for instance, think about how would potential readers for your magazine navigate your content? Is your content going to be online and offline? Are you looking at a blend? Are you looking at one or the other? Have you thought about why for each of those? That's the kind of thing that focus groups, which is a big part of what they learn in usability's first foundational class, would be able to help you tease out. And then moving forward into other possible electives, we have classes in marketing, which is critical to the launch of any new organization, and certainly one that is looking for readership, regardless of whether it's online or offline. We have visual communication classes. Magazines really rely heavily on powerful imagery, and or many, at least the ones that I tend to read and enjoy, so I think about how those visual communication classes would also really dovetail. And then I'm also thinking about even our core classes when it comes to individual leadership, looking at communication styles, looking at the intersection of values and vocation in my core leadership class, thinking about Scott's core leadership class in the winter that has to do with organizational storytelling. Both of those core classes would also really be just a fantastic bedrock for you in terms of thinking about the possible launch of something new. And I have to say, Scott, who is Scott Morris, who you see in chat there, a current student of ours, he's a great example of someone that moved across the country, started our program, launched a new small communications firm that's had just tremendous success in a very short amount of time. That firm was co-launched with people that he knew here in Seattle, but that he also met through the program. So even just in this chat list, you're looking at a current student above you who is a keen entrepreneur and has had a tremendous impact in the community just in the short time he's been here. So these are going to be your classmates. These are going to be people that you rub shoulders with, that you sit next to in class. You never know where your collaborators are going to come from, but between the rich network of students and the tremendous connections that are provided through faculty and through those of us here at the university who steward the program, for the budding entrepreneur, I can't think of a better program to be affiliated with. So thank you for that question. Now, looking at Mei Ling, thank you so much. I think I'm going to call you Du Mei Ling, assuming that you are somewhere in Asia. You asked here, how long will it take to finish both the MCDM and the MCCN programs if doing full-time studies? And what is the maximum number of courses a student can enroll in each quarter? Thank you. Let's see. Well, to start with your first question, it sounds like you might be interested in the dual degree. So I will first talk a little bit about that, since I haven't mentioned it yet in this chat, and that is that it is possible to pursue both tracks. I mentioned earlier that when you apply to the program, you apply to one or the other, but actually you can also apply to do a double degree right out of the gate. Or once you have joined our program in one of the tracks, you can also choose to pursue a double degree and then apply once you are here at the University of Washington to add that secondary track. But to answer your question specifically, if you started off in the double degree and you're going as a full-time student, which means 2 classes a quarter, I'm thinking that that would be 8 quarters. And 8 quarters, then if you think about it, that being 4 quarters a year, that's you're looking at 2 years of sustained study to get 2 degrees, the MCDM and the MCCN. The maximum number of courses you can take in each quarter, I'm thinking that, I mean, there's a technical answer to that question, and then there's a philosophical answer to that question. The technical answer is probably 3, which would be 15 credits. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Like, technically, there's no maximum, but philosophically, we consider full-time 2 classes a quarter. That's a 10-credit load, and these are rigorous graduate level courses. We certainly have had students in the past who have, for certain reasons, decided one quarter to go for 3 classes, but that is something that we don't heavily encourage that, simply because that's a very, very heavy load when you have 5-credit classes. And so while for 1 quarter out of maybe an 8-quarter study or a 5-quarter study to do a triple load like that, manageable, especially if you're not working full time, but not advised. And so we encourage students to consider a 2-credit load quite ample when it comes to and that is how we refer to full-time status, is a 2-credit load. Is a 2-course load, which is 10 credits. Again, taking 3 is not an impossibility. I wouldn't recommend it in a sustained way. I would only recommend it maybe one of your quarters simply as a way to potentially expedite your finishing time. But in terms of really gleaning the most from classes, 2 a quarter is really what we recommend. Okay, Rebecca, thank you so much for putting up your second question. And your second question is, do you know if the program qualifies under the UW's tuition waiver for employees? You're new here. Welcome, congratulations to joining the UW. And then what's the application process? I can answer the first question unequivocally, which is that unfortunately, no, the University of Washington's tuition waiver for employees does not cover this program. I can actually say that I know that's a disappointment. The design of the UW tuition waiver actually wasn't ever intended to cover graduate school or degrees for people. It was really more to augment an employee's time here. I know that there are people that have been able to work towards that, but that is diminishing now in terms of the number of whether it's day programs or, in the case of us, a self-sustaining program that accept UW tuition waiver for employees. So sorry to be the bearer of bad news on that, but we still feel like against the competition, we are a bargain in terms of what we offer at the graduate level. And so I hope that even though we don't take the tuition waiver, that you still seriously consider our program. We're one of the only self-sustaining programs on campus that has a scholarship fund for students. It is available through application after you've completed 1 quarter in the program, and students can be funded up to once an academic year, and it's something we're also very proud of, because we know that, as I've said earlier, this is an investment of time and money, and we want to make sure that for students that are very committed and demonstrate talent in the classroom and a commitment to the program, that to the extent that we can help offset some of those costs, we will do that. So I do want to let people know about that. And along with that, having a scholarship around academic support, we also have a complimentary scholarship for professional development as well. Students are encouraged quarterly to apply for support that would take them or that would grant them anything from perhaps defraying the cost of attending a conference, both locally or maybe somewhere in the United States. If there's an event that they feel really would enhance their Comm Lead experience and that they'd be able to share what they learned with their Comm Lead community, we welcome those kinds of applications. And so I want to make that both clear. Now, Rebecca, you also asked about the application process. And our application process is outlined on the website. We have a deadline of February 1st. And so between now and then, we encourage you to go online, and you'll see that it's a combination of transcripts, letters of reference, a letter of intent from you, the applicant, and new this year, 2 new things this year. 1, we no longer require the GRE, and 2, we now are requiring a short video upload, which gives you an opportunity to speak to us as well as, in person, well, over video, as well as in writing. So the application components are very clear, and it is through the University of Washington Graduate School. And so know that we steer you in that direction from our website, and it is never too early to start that process. We encourage you to start gathering the material. You can certainly begin the application and then come back to it. It's not as if when you log in, you have to finish everything right at that moment. So know that you have time to work on it. But also know that we have a team that looks at all of the applications. Each application is read by 2 members of the leadership team, and then all applications are discussed by all 4 members of the leadership team sometime after the application deadline in February 1st, and we try to get decisions out as early into March as possible, because we know that people often will have multiple applications in play, and we want to give people time to choose. I would also just add to that, in terms of the application process, that we spend a lot of time, when we would look at all parts of the application, no stone remains unturned, but we absolutely spend, I'd say, the most time on your letter of intent. We really want to we really see your letter of intent as a chance for you as an applicant to share with us why you want to join the Comm Lead community, why now, how the degree you see fitting into your future goals, what about the degree appeals to you, if there are particular classes that resonate, particular faculty members, that's of keen interest to us. And so use that letter of intent, which I will also mention has a 500-word limit, so read directions carefully. This is an opportunity for you in a very succinct and polished way to share with us more about yourself, what motivates you at this moment to pursue this degree, how you plan on contributing to Comm Lead and engaging with Comm Lead, and how you see Comm Lead supporting you in the future. We're really excited to read about that. So spend time on that application. Thanks. Okay, Du Meiling, yeah, you're in China studying in Toronto. Oh, Toronto, that's where our director, Hansen, spent many, many years. What resources and support does Comm Lead provide for its students, especially the students who are looking for an internship? Okay, so that's a great question, and I can answer that in a number of different directions, and I'll try to cover them all. And I'll start with your first question, Du Meiling, which is about internships in particular. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the way that the degree is designed is such that students who want to pursue an internship can pursue an internship and apply up to 15 credits of internship time to their 45-credit degree, which is significant. And so clearly we see the value, and we encourage students who want to pursue an internship to do just that. When I think about internships, I think about the real spectrum of the professional experience of a graduate student in our program, and the fact that we know that a deep motivation for the degree is to have opportunities at the career level that perhaps one might not have before becoming a member of the Comm Lead community. And so we take that responsibility very, very seriously, not just in the form of internships and the kind of approach we take and the value we place upon them in terms of applying their credits to your degree, but we also even start before that. From the very beginning, we offer to all students a 5-series sequence with a career coach here in the Greater Pacific Northwest named Angie Lindsay. You can also read all about her on our website, and we retain Angie exclusively in our exclusive to this particular graduate program. Angie has had a career coaching business and it continues to be someone who works in the hiring field in terms of technology. She designs, unique to the Comm Lead program, a 5-sequence career workshop series that starts in each fall and runs through the spring. And those workshops are designed to help students and alumni, they're open to alumni as well, think strategically and mindfully about their career and the design of the career arc through not only their time in the program, but how to maximize the time in the program toward a fulfilling career. Not only are these 5 workshops free to all students and alumni, but if you attend just one of those workshops, you are then given a free hour with Angie Lindsay one-on-one to talk about your career ambitions and the path to best achieve those ambitions. And this is just a tremendous resource that, again, distinguishes us from many, not just professional graduate programs on campus, but any graduate program on campus, to have that dedicated career coach that is part of the fabric of our community. When it comes to internships, mailing, I would say that the word entrepreneurial comes to mind because we encourage students to be very proactive in seeking out those internships. We can certainly meet with you, talk with you about your interest, connect you with people that are at institutions or organizations or firms that are of interest to you. We have a very rich alumni network that's working here, not just in the greater Pacific Northwest, but we've had students pursue internships in New York City and connect with Comm Lead graduates out there as well. So we are all of us at Comm Lead, every single one of us, whether it's faculty member, staff, we thrive in providing our networks and how those create open doors for our students. Now, we don't have a program where you can sit down and we can hand over a database, and these are 60 different organizations that work with us specifically around internships. We don't have that kind of formality around it. Instead, we really encourage students to be the keepers of their own destiny when it comes to internships, and really encourage you to think proactively about if you could do an internship anywhere in Seattle or anywhere in the United States or beyond that. We have students that have done internships overseas. Where would it be, and how can we help you achieve that? So tremendous support and guidance, but also an expectation of a lot of self-motivation on the part of a graduate student to chart their course, to make those overtures, to identify for us a list of places that are appealing, and then we can sit down and problem solve. Okay, how can we create those opportunities for you to make connections, to find out about possibilities, and to meet with people? I spend a lot of time happily connecting current students with alumni, with faculty, with members of my greater Rolodex here in the Pacific Northwest to make those internships happen. So thanks for asking that. And Rebecca, I'm happy to have had that chance to answer your questions. I really appreciate you asking them, because those were questions that were really valuable for anyone on this call to have been able to hear. Any last questions? I can't believe how fast the time has gone. We only have about 7 or 8 more minutes, but I'm happy to answer any more questions you guys have. Oh, mailing, do mailing. Good, another question. Do Comm Lead students have the same access to the services of UW Career Center and libraries like other registered students in non-professional degrees? Absolutely, yes. Every Comm Lead student is a graduate student at the University of Washington, afforded the same opportunities, access, services as any graduate student at the University of Washington, professional or otherwise. You apply through the University of Washington Graduate School, you have exactly the same status. So any and all of the services, from the libraries to the clubs to the gym to all kinds of professional services, those exist for Comm Lead students. Absolutely, it's a great question. And I'm glad to see mailing that you have an entrepreneurial spirit. That's great. That shows that you're absolutely one of our tribe. You're very welcome. Thanks for asking, and I hope that things are going well in Toronto. What do we ask on this? Oh, yes, it's a story. Nice. And a question from Scott Macklin. Tell us about some of the groovy things you do when you're not teaching. Oh my goodness. Where to start? Well, I am, well, as my colleagues know, I am an avid bike commuter. I sold my car 2 years ago. I bike to and from the University of Washington, even in the rain, believe it or not. I am definitely one of those crazy people. I have a big poncho. I look like Grimace rolling down the street. I am also now, I think, starting in January, I will be 2.5 years into a very amateur ceramics career. Never thought that this was going to happen, but back when I taught my first core class to the cohort 13, I had encouraged all of them to really take risks, to really involve themselves in something creative that was new for them. And I thought, well, if I'm asking my students to do this, I should really do the same thing. And I had never made anything I hadn't made anything out of clay until since about second grade, when I was making those little coil cups for my mom and dad. And at the time, I also felt like I spent a lot of time thinking about things. A lot of my time was in my head, thinking about curriculum, thinking about the concepts, typing with my hands, but I wasn't doing things with my hands that didn't involve a keyboard. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to take a step back and work with clay? And I didn't know what to expect. I used my network to find someone who was highly recommended, and it has turned into one of the most rewarding things that I do right now. And one of the reasons has to do with community, and it has to do with the fact that even though there were 7 of us that were randomly put together on Tuesdays, we are now so devoted to one another and to our shared love of clay that we sign up for the same class every single quarter. So we've now been together almost 2 years, and it's turned into this whole wonderful network for me of people that enjoy clay. We come at it in different ways. Some people use the wheel, some people like me just do hand building. But to me, it's been just a great expression of not just how to take something inanimate like clay and then turn it into something functional, but I love the way in which it slows me down. And that slow is so much, there's a meditative quality to the way I like to work with clay, and the fact that it involves these wonderful people is just a tremendous connection for me. So those are some of the things that I do when I am not teaching at Comm Lead. Oh my goodness, only a minute to go. And any final questions? Let's see. Well, and I would also be remiss to say that, I do bake a lot of pie. My season is coming up. Thanksgiving is upon us. I'm already planning out my pie menu for the upcoming holiday. And I had my first taste of pumpkin pie last Sunday. A friend of mine made his inaugural pie for the season, and I gotta say, it was really, really good. But I'm thinking that between pecan and apple and my grandmother's chocolate silk, there are lots of opportunities. So with that, it's always good to end on pie. I want to thank Du-Mei Ling and Rebecca and Scott for joining our inaugural live chat. It was a delight to be able to speak to you all. I want to encourage folks, you'll see in the chat box, I reminded everyone of our website This is a newly designed website, even more user-friendly than it's been in the past. It has a tremendous amount of information there, videos of the incredible work that our students are doing. As I said, it's got the three-quarter sweep of classes available for you to look at to really give you a sense of the kind of curricular offerings that we have. Has rich bios of our faculty, those of us on staff here at the University of Washington. Gives you access to information about the application process if you have questions, and tell your friends, come back and join us next Wednesday at noon Pacific Standard Time, and we will see you then. Thanks so much for joining.